Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Thira Pranachari Yamuna Thira Pranachari Jaya Dhamarava Punjabihari Shri Maradha Ki Haribo. Hare Krishna. So reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace. Chapter 13. Text 45. So I suspect that's not quite what's on the board. Text 35, no. I don't think so. Is it? Well, let's have a look. Chetra. No. Okay. Alas. Alack. No. So I'll just read it through. And then we'll carry on to the translation and purport. Chetra nagyorivam antaram jnana chakshusha uta prakriti moksham cha ye vidhu yanti te param. Chetra, body. Chetra yoho, of the proprietor of the body. Evam, that. Antaram, very good. Difference. Jnana, chakshusha, by vision of knowledge. Bhuta, living entity. Prakriti, material nature. Moksham, liberation. Cha, also. Ye, one who. Vidhu, knows. Yanti, approaches. Te, they. Param, supreme. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation from this bondage also attains to the supreme goal. Purport. Actually, let's read that through because we used to do this at the temple. It's nice back in Melbourne. So please repeat. One who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation from this bondage also attains to the supreme goal. Purport. The purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body, the owner of the body, and the supersoul. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, he can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life by various instructions. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. That is the gross manifestation. And the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there is the soul. And there's also the supersoul. The soul and the supersoul are two. This material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and also can see the situation of the Supreme Soul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. Chetra chetra nagnayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidhu yanti te param. One who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation from this bondage also attains to the supreme goal. Amajnana timanandasya gana gana shalakaya chakshuram litam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Trayam Svarayam Tadati Svabrantikam. Good. So, Prabhuji, may I have the other stand? The flat one? Just because of I forgot that it's better for the computer. With my notes. Low. The low rider. Danke, danke. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. So we're just completing the 13th chapter, Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. And the other three categories are the body, owner, and the supersoul. The body being referred to in this chapter as Chetra, which is? Chetra is? Close enough. The field of activities. Field of activities. And Chetragya means the Prabhu? Correct. And Paramatma for the newbies, what is it? Huh? Supersoul, correct. Localized Paramatma, yeah, that's right. That's right. So really, this is incredibly profound in that the Gita is separating all the elements, both matter and spirit, in this very simple breakdown into three main categories. And this is phenomenal because even in our advanced scientific, empirically advanced scientific age, in that empirical science has never been so powerful as of today, and tomorrow it'll be a little more powerful. And empirical science is that by which we can prove inventions, technology, cars, photocopiers, air conditioning, all of these things. This is empirical science. There's a formula to make these, and this can be written down in a hypothesis. And that hypothesis can be tested again and again and proven to be correct in terms of, for instance, how one produces compensation or heat or cold through various material machines. But with all this advancement, they still cannot accurately or confidently describe what is consciousness and what is spirit. They are still very unclear on this. And so therefore they resort to the argument that it's more or less a mystery, that it's chance. Chance is saying it's a mystery to us. We don't know, actually, when you think about it. When they say it's chance, Zufall, then they're saying, actually, we don't know. So this is a bluff. This is a bluff by the scientists. So Krishna can allow the scientists to have the intelligence to do this. In fact, Krishna has not just allowed, but he has also given the intelligence for the atheists to come up to arguments as to why Krishna does not exist. This is the benevolence and the kindness of Krishna. So they repay Krishna ultimately by saying he doesn't exist, which is the nature of the envious, actually. It's the nature of the envious. So they cannot destroy God, so they try to destroy God philosophically. So to this end, they are asuras. Not all of them, but anyone who uses it to deny the existence of God is atheist. He is asura. Asura means also demon. So the demons wish to destroy Krishna. That is their aim. And so that is why Prabhupada put so much emphasis in combating and fighting the Mayavad, the insidious Mayavadi philosophy, as well as the Sunyavadi philosophy, the voidist, Buddhistic philosophy, which is saying there is no God, that it's just a void. There's just a void. Or, yes, there's God, and you can become God if you just use this mantra. But the mantra is not free, of course. You have to pay to use this mantra. So Mayavadis are doing this. They're selling mantras to become God. So the devotee actually needs to be quite wary of Mayavadi philosophy. I was just watching some old Prabhupada footage from 1970. And the movement was exploding. The movement was expanding very rapidly. And to this end, there was a main, they were going to have the first GBC meetings in New Vrindavan, which is in West Virginia? West Virginia? New Vrindavan? Fixera. We think. We suspect, anyway, it's West Virginia. I'm pretty sure it's West Virginia. And there was going to be the first temple president meeting, all the temple presidents. There's about 1970, so we're talking 30 to 40 temples back then. In 1971, there was about 40 temples that were listed on the on other managerial documents. Anyway, so they were going to have this big meeting. Srila Prabhupada was not present. And then suddenly there were devotees being chastised by sannyasis for not recognizing Prabhupada's true position as God. As God. You haven't heard of this? No? Yeah? Yeah, you heard. Yeah, so this was being preached at New Vrindavan. And so they were also preaching that because you didn't recognize Srila Prabhupada was God, he has gone back to India. So it's your fault. And this was being preached by leading sannyasis, and they had devotees in so much distress and so much mental anguish and pain because they were propagating this, actually what was a Mayavad philosophy, amongst the devotees within the movement. And this was causing tremendous distress. Naturally, when Srila Prabhupada heard about this, he was irate, obviously. And then he instructed his disciples to solve this problem, and they had to be restrained. They had to be incarcerated on the premises. This is according to the report, so I'm not saying these reports are 100% accurate, but they're coming from the mouths of the devotees involved, so we're going on their faith and honor. And so the devotees were restrained, and they were removed from the association of the other devotees because the contamination was so toxic. They had to be removed. And then, of course, once they were out, they suddenly regained their senses, regained their sense control, and then were repatriated into ISKCON. So the sannyasis returned, and the philosophy was, they were rectified, and the philosophy was again being properly discussed. So we shouldn't think that this Mayavadi philosophy is limited to a sannyasi in an ekadandi sannyasi. Ekadandi means just one, right? They don't have the three. They don't have the 3 points on the sannyas. That's a tridandi sannyas. Body, mind, and heart. So that is of the personalist sannyas, as opposed to the ekadandi sannyasi, who is preaching Mayavadi, who's preaching we can all become God. So if Prabhupada is God, then when Prabhupada goes, we can also become God. And then you can worship us, and we'll show you how to become God. So very insidious, very dangerous, very appealing. But we also have to remember that devotees are coming from different births, different austerities, and different pastimes. So often what happens to the impersonalist in the Brahmajyoti? If someone gets Brahmajyoti impersonal liberation, where do they go? Yes. Thakur Haridas, where do they go? To the Brahmajyoti, right, that's right. So they get Brahmajyoti, but can they stay there? Why don't they stay there? Why don't they stay there? Why don't these jivas stay in the Brahmajyoti permanently? They get bored. Yeah, they realize their personality. Oops. Wrong turn at Albuquerque. Yeah. So then they have to come back down. They have to come back down into the material plane. And Prabhupada says, like, they come down through raindrops. The raindrops go on the grains. And the grains are then consumed. And with great fortune, they're consumed by a brahmana. And then that spirit soul can take another birth through that. Through consumption by the brahmana, and then the brahmana, if he impregnates, and then the jiva has the good fortune of taking birth in a Brahmin family or aristocratic family. Prapya punya kritam nokan. So people come from different backgrounds. So it's not hard to imagine that a lot of people attracted to this movement had, in previous lives, had performed some Mayavadi austerities. Because there's still mode of goodness. It's still mode of goodness, Mayavadi. So they can accrue a lot of pious credits by being celibate, by following the regulative principles. That's a lot of pious credit compared to the average mlecha in the West, right? who is doing so much simple activity. So in this way, we have people from all different backgrounds that are attracted to Krishna consciousness. And so this is the tremendous purport of this particular chapter, and that it's breaking down all these elements. Because really there's only two main categories. The two main categories are spirit and matter. But what is within that? So Prabhupada mentions the 24 elements, and I thought it would be nice to find another explanation so we know precisely what he's referring to. And here it is. So I'll just read it out. This is from an earlier verse, but I thought it'd be nice to go through it. So this is from, this is the same chapter, but it's verses 6 to 7. So purport. So if you go to text 6 and 7 of the same chapter, and I'm going to read those out, because I think it's an important point. And they're broken into categories, and I counted the categories. So the categories go, there's 5 in the first category, 3 in the second, 5 in the fourth, 5 in the third, 5 in the fourth, and then there's 1, and then there's another 5. It doesn't matter. We're not doing a quiz. There's no test after. I'm just, in case you're interested, these are the different categories. Okay, from all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutta. Aphorism is like a saying, a parable, or a anecdote. Aphorism, redewendung, perhaps, of the Vedanta Sutta. The components of this world can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 great elements, Mahabhuta. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. Then there are 5 senses for acquiring knowledge: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. On that point, that's why the chanting of the Hare Krishna, if you think about it, it actually tries to engage the most amount of senses, which is very intelligent, right? Because you've got the eyes. Well, you can actually see yourself chanting, of course. You can see your hand moving, see you chanting. Ears, of course, for hearing the chanting. The nose, hopefully there's some incense burning. Tongue and skin. So skin is the tactile when we're chanting. Yeah, so 3 out of 5, not bad. Okay, getting back to this. Then 5 working senses: voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then the above senses. There is the mind. So this is considered a separate one. This is the one that was cited earlier, which is within and which can be called the sense within. Prakriti stani, and also in the verse Prakriti stani karsati, it also refers, Bhagavad Gita refers to the mind also as a sense. Is the jiva is struggling very hard with the senses, which include the mind. Then there are the 5. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Okay, so we've got 11. Then there are the 5 objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Taste, form, touch, and sound. So again, we're getting 3 from the chanting as well. Form, touch, and sound. Now the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. Field of activity. So here Prabhupada is expanding and he's breaking it down, and this is the body. This is the body. So 8,400,000 types of this field of activity are available, are on the market. You can try your luck, but none of these are guaranteed. Well, some are guaranteed. It depends on how strictly you follow the Shastra. So, for instance, if you're a Kshatriya and you follow the Kshatriya vows, and then you die gloriously in battle, fighting for Vedic principles, then you are virtually guaranteed a heavenly body. So it is a science. It's not all. But for those who are in ignorance, but to those who know nothing of the Sanatana Dharma, then it is a crapshoot. It is a lottery. Because they're in complete ignorance. So they have no idea where they can go. Extremely dangerous position. I'll finish this and I'll get back to that point about the dangerous position of living entities. Okay, smell, touch, and sound. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the 5 great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms, represented by consciousness and conviction, are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. Purmira po nalo varyor kammano buddhiya revacha. Ahankara vimudatma. Ahankara is... Dingy. What's ahankara? No takers? Yes, Brian Prabhu. False ego, correct. Mano. Mano means correct. Buddhiya. Just shout out. Yes, because there's no prizes for second place. Very good. Intelligence. Yes. Then there's these subtle elements are included within the field of activities. So then the 5. So this is also reflected in the verse Bhumira pona lo rayor kammano buddhiya jahankara itiyane bina prakriti astada. So where Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita the 5 Bhumira pona lo varyor, earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, and ahankara. So that's also touched upon in that verse, but that's a powerful verse. So these are the 24 elements. So this is very nice. It's a very nice explanation. It's breaking it down. And this is the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, you can read and study this book over and over and over again, and it's ever expanding. It's just ever expanding. Because what you learn at one level, you read at one time at one particular... And it's the same with a lot of mundane literature too. You can read it at one stage of your life, and it has a meaning. If you read back and you have more wisdom and then you read it again, it's like, okay, now I really understand where this is going. Well, this is infinitely more like this with the Bhagavad Gita. So this is such a powerful book. And I think sometimes it's a bit minimized. People say, Bhagavad Gita, it's ABCs, if you really want. And then you go and do the graduate program. But really, Bhagavad Gita is, if you truly understand and have realized Bhagavad Gita, then you are realized. So Bhagavad Gita is just such a wonderful book, and particularly if one is philosophically inclined. So for those who aren't so philosophically inclined, then it's nice to have Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's nice to be able to remember spiritual principles with the Leela of the great personalities, the Mahajans, the demigods. So it's very nice to have that. But the core of it is really the philosophy in terms of defeating all other philosophies. So we have the most powerful philosophy. We have the most potent words and vibrations to defeat all groups within this material world, within these 3 worlds. And this is the power of it. So anyway, I get one last note on the dangerous position. And this is this is a key point on why we shouldn't compromise our principles in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada, when he came to New York, in Boston in 1965, he noted that it was somewhat discouraging in the first year because there was nothing, and he was struggling very severely, performing so many austerities in order to help, in order to enlighten the West. Not to help, but to actually do it. And at this point, he noted he was willing to go through all this, and he was willing to tolerate so much with the hippies, including, cleaning up after them, cooking for them, cleaning up for them. This is before they offered to even help. They didn't think to offer. But he stated that I was never going to compromise the four regulative principles. That was never on the table, so to speak. That was never going to be compromised. Similarly, the devotees should also not compromise in terms of their philosophy. Of course, there's an artfulness to it, in that one should not preach Krishna consciousness so forcefully that it becomes unattractive to people that are interested. For instance, a common mistake, I think, is that when one's first into Krishna consciousness and they go to preach, it's like, and we've got the four regulative principles, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's like, well, they didn't ask that question. They're not at this point. They're just interested more in the philosophy and in what you do and how they can apply it. So to bring that up straight away, it's really pushing them away. And it's also like a prideful thing to say, isn't it, really? Is to say, look, we're so advanced. We're following all these principles. You're a nonsense. But one day you might be like us. So we shouldn't preach like this. So there's an art to it. There's an art to preaching. In that one should preach at the level of the recipient in terms of how far they are and how attracted they are to Krishna consciousness. And to sound out their area of interest and to encourage them into chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So they should be encouraged nicely in this way. However, we should also not shy away from difficult philosophical points. So in this connection, Siddhanta Baliya Chitti, Siddhanta Baliya Chitti, Na Kara Alasa, Iha Hoite Kare Lage, Sudrida Manasa. So one should not neglect discussing such conclusions, considering them controversial. For such discussions strengthen the mind. Thus one's mind becomes more attached to Krishna. So this is what's written. And what does that mean? That means that we shouldn't shy away from discussing these points, particularly amongst the devotees. Amongst the devotees, this should be very much discussed. The most controversial points, such as feminism and homosexuality and other subjects. So we have to be strong on these points, because we can't undermine our philosophy by not discussing them, by shying away from them. We actually indirectly undermine our philosophy. So Prabhupada was very bold about this. The reality is we are not for feminism. We are not for homosexuality. We are not for these particular popular, fashionable causes in modern culture. And that these are now considered a cause célèbre. as they say, a cause célèbre. So we have to be clear in discussing what is our position. So as the Bible says, hate the deed, not the doer. But actually a devotee hates nothing. Devotee is completely impartial and favorably disposed to every living entity. But to say, oh, we don't want to discuss these because these are not popular, then this undermines our position. Actually, this undermines our position. So particularly amongst devotees, we should be very strong on these points and very clear as to what our position is. So we are not against women. We are not against gay men or gay women. But the Vedic culture is the Vedic culture. This is Sanatan Dharma. It doesn't change. It's not as if God made a mistake and then we need to rethink it for him. Which is a lot of Christians, they're compromising like this. They're completely compromising. No one's strong on this. No one's speaking out against this nowadays. They're so weak. Yeah. So where they're weak, we have to be strong because people ultimately want the truth. And it's all interconnected. It's the truth is the truth. The truth is a fabric that is held together by each individual thread. If you take away the threads, then it's no longer the truth. Is it not? Truth is the truth. In a murder scene or whatever, there are so many bits of evidence, and they all tend to corroborate. They corroborate if it's the truth. If it's not the truth, they will not corroborate, and therefore some of the evidence has to be suppressed. So therefore, truth is like a fabric made up of many threads. And just because we remove or don't want to discuss various threads, that doesn't mean it's not the truth. But if we want to show the full fabric, then we have to be willing to discuss all subject matter, because we have the most powerful philosophy. And in this way, people often think that this is not compassionate. We need to be compassionate and just let people do what they want to do. But that is like allowing a baby to play with razor blades. Well, he wants to play with the razor blades, so why don't I just let him? Why? Because the baby will cut himself or herself. Isn't it? The baby will damage itself. So, similarly, Bhagavad Gita says, this is the final point to link it all in. The Bhagavad Gita says that should one die in ignorance, they will take an animal birth. They will lose millions of years of their life by not practicing that one austerity of abstaining from that sinful activity. So these activities are in the mode of ignorance. And if we do not preach against the mode of ignorance, we are allowing living entities to go into animalistic births and to suffer so much longer. So what's true compassion? True compassion is to warn the living entity, to help prevent the living entity from suffering life after life in lower species. True compassion is empowering them to use the human birth to understand their position as Krishnera Nityadas, as the eternal servant of Krishna. Otherwise, their suffering will be prolonged and prolonged and prolonged and prolonged. So this is the compassion which is manifested through the books of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Any questions, comments, criticisms, complaints, observations? Taste, yes? How's that? Yeah, touch, tactile. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, seeing, that's right, yeah. So many nice. So I remember having that discussion with my dad, and my dad was like, no, yeah, but you're seeing the beads too, and you're also feeling them. So he's counting all the senses for him. I'm like, wow, he's right. We're engaging a lot of senses when we chant Hare Krishna. Very powerful, chanting Hare Krishna. So but Dean Prabhu or Brian?
No, you briefly said first that we're not for homosexuality, and then you said, yeah, we're kind of indifferent to that. Yeah, if you want to elaborate on that, like.
Yeah, it's not. If I said that's not what I meant. We're not indifferent. I said we're not. We're impartial actually to all living entities.
Impartial. Sorry.
So yes, it's not like we are. Krishna is like the father, right? So any father, virtually any father, unless they have serious mental illness, loves their children, right? And most parents, you've heard parents say all the time, we love you equally, right? But we always have our suspicion, yes, but you allowed my brother to go to New Zealand and you didn't take me to go to New Zealand, you took my bigger brother. So they may favor one of their children more, but it doesn't mean they love the others any less. So this is true, right? So it's a material example, but it's quite true. Some parents, I really like Bobby, but Betty, she gets on my nerves, but I love them equally. Parents see no contradiction in that. So similarly, Krishna loves and is impartial to all living entities. And so when the devotee becomes Krishna conscious, he takes on that quality. He takes on the same qualities of Krishna. And so in this way, the devotee is also impartial. We're impartial, but actually I also said we're actually lovingly disposed towards living entities because we are paradukha dukhi. Right? We have compassion for the suffering of other living entities. So in this way, a devotee cannot really be fully joyous all the time because he must occasionally reflect and realize there are jivas that are suffering. There's so much suffering going on. And the world has been misdirected. It's been completely misdirected by these charlatans, by these cheats who say, yes, homosexuality is okay. Yes, feminism is great. When it's completely destroying and undermining the family structures all over the Western world. It is destroying them. It is obliterating them. And it's causing so much more unhappiness. And women have to work now twice as hard. We are actually the real feminists because we are promoting femininity. They're not feminists because they're promoting masculinity. They want women wearing football boots and army boots. That's what they want. Isn't it? That's what they want. We're the ones protecting femininity. We're saying, no, this is sacred. It has to be protected. Women are supposed to be regarded as women, not like prostitutes. So they're the ones that are promoting all this. And now women are suffering so much more because they're working so much harder than they ever did before. And they're not being... And actually, even in your own lives, you could just see the women who are protected by their men, who have nice children, who don't have to work too hard. Normally, they will be the happiest women you'll meet. That's my experience. So it just happens to correspond exactly with what Bhagavad Gita is saying. Or no? What do you think?
Yeah, thank you. No, I wanted to, because I read once that back in the days, like there used to be kind of like Varnashrama Dharma in the Vedic places, and homosexuals were kind of like put out of the village somehow. Like they would have their own village or like own place where they be outside of the Varnashrama Dharma. Otherwise, they would have create some disturbance within the Varnashrama Dharma. I don't know if you ever heard.
This is in Shastra?
Yes, I cannot remember where I read it, but
was it read or did you hear it at a lecture or something?
I cannot really remember. So no, but I wanted to ask you if you knew already something about that. They were calling like third sex or something.
I don't know about that. All I know is I've read Prabhupada's letters to particular devotees that were struggling with that. And he was just, he'd refer to them friends as, oh, your intimate friend, such and such. How's he? And he encouraged them to get married. So, I mean, it's ultimately sex urge. So either it's not really a big deal because if they can control the sex urge, then that's fine. We don't have a problem with it. They can still be brahmachari or they can still be brahmacharini. But if they can't control, then they should get married in the conventional. That was Prabhupada's formula for that. And Prabhupada was very compassionate. He was very inclusive. And so there were many. There were many homosexuals within Krishna consciousness. And there was even sannyasi, notable sannyasi. So, but Krishna consciousness can include everyone. But if they just follow the rules, that's it. So everyone is suffering from the sex urge so much. The sex desire is spinning the world. The world is revolving around sex desire. But that particular type of, and it's not that it's just homosexuals are in the mode of ignorance. No, it's also this lifestyle of, I think we discussed it the other day, of promoting women hunting, so having multiple partners and never getting married. That's also very sinful. That's also mode of ignorance. This is in the mode of passion, but also gets very much into the mode of ignorance. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's condemned. And that's why even traditional religions condemn these things, because they're trying to elevate people to at least human consciousness. Prabhupada calls it a human standard, right? They have marriage, to not have extramarital affairs, and to not have homosexuality, to not have these things. So this was considered to be elevation to the human standard. From the human standard, one can then strive for the Vaishnava standard. So this is why the whole civilization is actually going to hell. It's actually going to hell. So, and it's getting to the point where who knows how long Mother Bhumi can withhold this simple activity. She cannot stand a lie, what to speak of what's going on in the world today. And therefore we're seeing all these disturbances. This is it. This is a direct result of karma. And people always just want to single out, oh, it's Biden, oh, it's Putin. No, it's not. It's you. You're the one who's perpetrating all this bad karma, all this vikarma. And therefore you're empowering these demons to have complete control and to send you off to war, because you were involved in the animal slaughter. And from the animal slaughter, that begets war. Anadbhavanti bhutani parjanyada anasambhava yajna bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudbhava. It's that all grains are produced from rains, and rains are produced by the performance of yajna. Yajna karma samudbhava, born of samudbhava. Karma is born of. And yajna is the performance of your duty, your correct duty, whether that duty as a Brahmin, as a Kshatriya, as a Vaishya, as a Sudra. So in this way, everything can be nicely maintained by the demigods. And the threefold klesha, sufferings, which are, Prabhu, what are the threefold sufferings? What are the three kleshas? Adi? Yes, I'm asking. I'm looking at you. No, there's three. Adi Atmika Klesha? Yes?
I don't know the name in Sanskrit, but the one caused by the...
Does anyone know the Sanskrit? If not, we'll get back to you, Brian. Okay, over to you, Brian.
The one caused by your own mind.
Adi Atmaka Klesha?
Yeah, the one caused by the other living entities, and
Adi Bhautika Klesha?
And the one caused by nature. But
Adi Devika Klesha. So you should know this. Actually, all the bhaktas should know this. So, should people be performing their yajna and performing their duty, then the demigods are satisfied, and then there's enough rain, and then there's enough grain, there's enough food, and so everything's nice. But when there's irreligion, when there's adharma becomes rampant, so we're seeing the destruction of Christianity. The Christian culture is now gone in Germany, pretty much, is not, practically speaking. Christian culture's gone. Most Christian cultures in the West are pretty much been eviscerated. That means ripped out from the stomach. They've been destroyed. And so there we're seeing more and more disturbances. And they will come in the form of Adidevika Klesha, the demigods not providing, or, cyclones, storms, all this stuff. Adibautika Klesha, more living entities attacking each other. And Adi-atmika Klesha, and that's the mind trying to make sense of the craziness. That's another form of suffering. It's another sense. So this is why. And this is why there's chaos, because the civilization is being completely misdirected. That's why. Because they're saying, you can do this, you can do that, it's okay, everything's okay, just vote me in so I can have my sense enjoyment in this position, and you can go to hell. So this is violence. It's a very violent world. Hare Krishna. Anything else? It's getting on. Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna.